Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Heal with Kat podcast. My name is Kat. I am your host, and as always, I am so grateful that you're here. Today's episode is an extra special episode because we're celebrating a huge milestone for someone I deeply admire, someone who's been a huge expander for me, the one and only Krista Williams. Krista is the co-founder of Almost 30, a global community and brand dedicated to empowering people through life's transitions. She's also the co-host of the Almost 30 podcast, a critically acclaimed show that's been a guiding light for so many on their spiritual and wellness journeys, and the co-creator of Morning Microdose, a top-rated daily inspiration podcast. Krista leads luxury wellness retreats around the world and has helped thousands of women through her courses, The Life Edit and Metamorphosis. It also marks the release of her very first book, Almost 30, a definitive guide to a life you love for the next decade and beyond, co-written with her dear friend, business partner, and podcast co-host, Lindsay. In this conversation, we talk about the heart behind this book and the journey that her and Lindsay went through, navigating different chapters of their lives, and ultimately how you bring two people in different worlds together to create something so powerful and meaningful, something I know will live on many women's nightstands and desks, and if it's anything like the conversation we had today, in a lot of women's hearts. We also dive into what it means to navigate the messy in-between spaces of life and really holding space for that. The most, I think, poignant part of the whole episode for me was the part where we talk about finding your true voice after deep healing. And Krista leads us into this crazy, amazing wisdom about what it means to use your voice and how you can use it as such an incredible tool in a really spiritual and embodied way. And, you know, for someone like me who uses my voice all the time on the podcast every week, on my meditations with clients, I've considered myself to be somebody who was knowledgeable in how to use my voice. I mean, been using it for a very long time, even outside of this role. And hearing her wisdom about what it really means, like almost like the energetic responsibility behind using your voice, it just blew me away. And it's information and advice I don't think I'll ever forget. We also talk about how power dynamics exist within being in our superpower and success and how we measure it and how to build a life rooted in authenticity rather than in the expectations of what other people may want or think we need. This one just feels like sitting down with a friend you can be fully human with, and I can't wait for you guys to listen. Grab a pen, a journal, piece of paper, grab the notes app on your phone. As always, take notes because this is going to take you on an evolutionary, psychosolic, mind-blowing journey. So with that, let's dive in. All right, everyone, please help me welcome Krista Williams to the Heal with Kat podcast. What an honor.
What's up, girl? I'm excited to be here. I feel like two blondes just having a conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm really excited to dive into the conversation today. But before we get into anything, I have to say congratulations. And when this episode comes out, it is the official launch day of your brand new book with Lindsay. It's called Almost 30, a definitive guide to a life you love for the next decade and beyond. So huge accomplishment. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I feel like it's one of those things like people keep telling me about. They're like, congrats, that's amazing. And it's like hitting a windshield for me. I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, I think sometimes in life we have goals or plans, and when they're achieved, it's kind of, it has to sink in. And I don't think for real it's sunk in yet. You know, even when we turn in the manuscript, like we hold the book and it doesn't feel quite real, even though I feel so proud. It's an amazing book and I'm so hard on myself. So to be proud of it is like such an accomplishment for me. But thank you so much. That's my long-winded thank you.
I'm sure that you and Lindsay poured your hearts into the book. I mean, I've been following your guys' journey since 2021. I was deep in the sacredness of being single with Lindsay. I was 27 post-divorce, and I was like trying to figure out how to be single in today's world. And then naturally kind of evolved into watching you and your evolution over the last few years as well. And I have some questions about that. But I'm so curious to know, like, what season of life were you both in that this idea sparked, and how did you know it was time to write it?
For our book. So for anyone that's listening, book writing and the process has changed like a lot in the past couple of years with social media and media. So I think where I had an idea that authors just kind of like live in a house and write a book and put out the book in the world, and it's just kind of like people read it and then it just grows. Like Women Who Run with the Wolves is one of my favorite books, and it came out forever ago. It's one of her greatest works, and it just kind of grew from word of mouth. But nowadays it's a lot different. So for most people that have followings or podcasts or brands or businesses, it's kind of part of the path to write a book. But when that usually is the case, I want to go a different way. And I don't want to do it because I don't like to do things that are expected or, people perceive that you will have to do. So I always kind of resisted it over the years. We've been doing the podcast since 2016. We started it on our closet floors just out of feeling really lost and wanting to connect and wanting to make more of our lives pretty much. And so we resisted it. And we were in a season of great change, she and I, in our relationship. I was divorcing my husband at the time. She was pregnant with her baby and she was newly married, and we were living on opposite coasts. And so the business was kind of evolving in different ways too. And when we were approached by our book agent, Tess, who's the most amazing woman, she's incredible. I just took a call with her right away and knew. And it was one of those things that reminded me how when things are easy and flow, they're usually right. And at that time, it was the perfect time because I could write my pieces when I was in Los Angeles, going through my divorce at home, kind of processing things and just being alone with my thoughts and kind of in the process of writing. And Lindsay could also do that when she had her baby and she was on the opposite coast. And it made a lot of sense for both where we were in our lives, both mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, where the business was, and then also for where Almost 30 was. We started it in 2016, like I said. I was in my relationship with my long-term boyfriend, then became husband. I was in a completely different phase of life, completely different relationship with my body, with my friends, with money, with my partner. She was in a completely different phase of life too. And it was also such a marker for us of how our lives have completely transformed. You would think that me being divorced and single now was like sad, but it was actually the most beautiful thing for me. I now have amazing relationships. I feel great in my body. I have abundance and all of these things. And she's in her own version of what is great for her, the life that she loves. And so it was a place where we were both like, we can write this book. We can truly say that we met the challenges of our Saturn return. We met the challenges of our late 20s, and we met them not with grace, but with grit and like resistance and mistrust and fear and all the things. But we really, really were able to build a life that we love. And so we were able to actually speak to what it takes to build a life that you love during seasons of change. So it was timing, it was God, and then it was really the belief in ourselves that we could now write a story and that we could now share the things with embodiment and not just like with the mind.
I mean, so beautifully said. You can see that tangibly on the podcast as well, how much you both balance each other in your perspectives, in your personalities, and also in your life chapters. And that's been so real for all of us to witness. I feel like it should be authentic. The word authentic needs to be somewhere in this sentence too, because it is so authentic. So given all of that, how do you write a book with someone else going through all of these chapters? I can imagine there may have been a lot of ups and downs and ebbs and flows.
Yes. Lindsay and I, who, co-founded Almost 30, do Almost 30 together, are best friends. We've been best friends for the past 10 years. And we were actually really lucky to start the business when we became best friends. Like the business has built and grown with our friendship. Sometimes it's harder for people to kind of transition into businesses while like being friends. So we had that. I think with writing the book, what we did in this book was we split it up by chapters. So where a lot of people can write books in a universal we, where they're like, we believe this, we believe that, we da 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 da. We just felt like we were two different people that had two different paths. And I think, as someone that's been listening, like what I speak about is very unique to my journey and path. And what Lindsay speaks about is very unique to her journey and path. She'll talk about motherhood. She's talked about codependency. She's talked about falling in love with her husband. She's talked about, infidelity in relationships. And I've talked about body. I've talked about soul. I've talked about spirituality. I've talked about, some different things. So that just made sense for us to kind of write our own chapters. And it actually became really fun because I could fully go into my own personal experience and I could go into my truth. And I didn't have to like clock with anybody if it was good, if it was, if we were kind of like working together. And there might be people that could do that. But I think for us, it was just great because we could flow in our own way. So Lindsay's style was like writing a little bit every day. She would get up, she'd bounce on the ball because she was so pregnant and then just write a little bit every day. I was like last minute, 48 hours writing. I was like, I had to wait for my channel to open and then I'd just be cruising. I'd be like, no, no, no. Like they'd be like, are you ready to go now? I'm like, okay, cool. How much time do we have? They're like, you have 20 hours. I'm like, great. I'm going to fucking cruise on 20 hours. Like I was a college student. It was so embarrassing. And there was something about it. I don't know if I needed the adrenaline. I don't know if I needed the cortisol. I don't know what it was, but I just needed that kind of thing. But writing was like such a pleasurable process. It was so nice. And I think you know this too, creating the podcast and doing what you do. Like building a business is so beautiful. And it's also for me personally, I love being a public figure. I love helping people. I love working with the women that I do, but it's exhausting sometimes feeling like I have to be forward facing. I have to always be presentable. I have to always be perfect. I have to always be online. I have to always be doing things. So to kind of turn inward and do something that was just me at my house on my couch with my cats and take time with it and sit with it and just have me and my mind and my thoughts. Like it makes me kind of emotional thinking about it because I just adore that. Like I adore that time so deeply. And so I actually really loved the writing process. The editing process is kind of a vibe, but overall it was beautiful. I think the part that's been hard for me more is like the marketing of it and like asking for favors and receiving help and support. So it's like its own microcosm of self-work, but we were able to do it.
Well, I feel like a project as big as that needs a lot of those supportive components. And it sounds like you had that totally. Why would somebody reach for this book? What is it going to help them with? Because when I hear you talking, I hear two women who represent a multitude of chapters that all women may potentially go through. Single, infidel, like just everything you just listed, right? Until where both of you are today. You're bringing so much wisdom and clarity for so many women who are going through these big life chapters. So is it for that woman? Who is it for?
Yeah. So the book is called Almost 30. So I think that kind of like puts it in a place where it is for the people that are turning 30. It's for those people going through their Saturn return, which is a very important astrological event in their lives where Saturn hits the same point in the sky as it was when they were born. So that brings in very deep personal lessons. It's kind of a restructuring of your life. It's a really hard look at who you are, who you were hanging out with, what are you doing, and how you're spending your time. And then it's also the time when your prefrontal cortex comes online. There's a lot that's happening. But it's also for the woman that is navigating any season of change and transformation in her life. You know, this book and the teachings in it are a lot of what I teach now, being in my mid 30s, to the women that I work with. You know, connecting with your soul, finding your true self, leaning on your intuition, navigating friendships and friendship breakups, having a better relationship with your body, letting go of codependency, finding ways to nourish yourself, mind, body, and soul. Like finding relationships and letting go of the idea of the one. Like it really is truly a spiritual guidebook to adulting. And I feel like anyone could get things from it. And even me, when we were reading our audiobook in New York, because we have our book as on audio as well. So you can get it on Spotify and Audible and all these things, which was like my favorite part of this process was reading our book for our audiobook. So when we were reading our book for our audiobook, I was not only so excited because I felt like so much of this was just so good, but I also was like, dang, I still need a lot of this medicine. Like I was like, oh my God, I've come so far, but when I was reading the burnout chapter, I was like, okay, there's still work to be done. And we wanted it to be a place where people felt held and supported by Lindsay and I, but also called forward, because I really believe that there are so many women out there that are made for more. And made for more doesn't always mean monetary success or followers or whatever, which it could. Made for more is really that connection to self, connection to God, connection to purpose. And I so desperately wanted that in my life. I so desperately wanted to feel like I had purpose. And I so desperately wanted to feel connected to something greater than me. And if you are someone that feels like you have that made for more and you are navigating seasons of change and transformation, or you're someone that's almost 30, it's going to be the perfect guidebook for you and the perfect support in your process.
I'm getting a little emotional because I'm that woman. I totally am. And I think that's why I attended the first Camp Almost 30 in 2021. And I had some big aha moments in that experience that really, you know, you and Lindsay became such expanders for me in those ways of being okay with wanting more and being seen more and expanding more. But you touched on something else that I think is really powerful. You loved reading the book and you loved like using your voice to speak the book, and you use your voice for the podcasts, and you're doing all these amazing speaking engagements. I saw you just did your voice activation retreat in Oceanside, which is up the street from where I grew up. And so your voice is one of your greatest tools. And it sounds like that is your voice is really kind of a bridge into this okay to want more path that you've taken. I would love if you could share how your relationship to your voice has evolved, especially through things like divorce, healing, spiritual growth, and being confident in using your voice.
Yeah, the voices, it's something I'm so passionate about because it's a manifestation of our soul. It's a manifestation of our mind, and it's a manifestation that happens through the body. The voice is what moves people. The voice is what makes change. The voice is what is going to be the linchpin to the life that you want, whether it's a deep, intimate relationship, or whether it's promotion, or whether it's a career, or whether it's to be on stages, or whether it's honest friendships. Like, we have to communicate and use our voice in every single area of our life. So when I talk about the voice, I talk about the actual texture and tone of the quality of your voice. And then I'm also talking about the words that you're speaking. And I'm talking about the voice written, the voice heard, the voice spoken. So there's so many different layers to the voice. It's just such a nuanced thing. But what I've come to realize over time is that it's been my most powerful tool. And that the more I've been able to focus on becoming a better speaker, becoming more clear, becoming more regulated, becoming more truthful with myself and truthful with others, and being able to speak my truth in hard times, like, the better my life has become. I have amazing, deep friendships that are true and honest and that are real because I'm able to communicate. I have amazing team members that feel seen and heard because we're able to communicate together. I have the podcast, which is an expression of my voice. Like, people connect with the words that I say and my voice on the show. So it's been something that I didn't see coming as my medicine in this life and as my gift or my tool, like I mentioned. But once I really noticed it and noticed its power, my life completely changed. And so for anyone that wants to explore the voice and sort of how they can expand their voice in the world, I think it's really helpful just to start to noticing the voice, noticing the body, and noticing the mind. So the voice is like the amalgamation of the three. We can have thoughts, the inner voice in our mind, and oftentimes those thoughts can be deemed as bad or good. We can like some of our thoughts, we can not like some of our thoughts, but noticing the thoughts often happens in meditation or reflection or contemplation. So we notice the inner thoughts of the mind because the inner thoughts of the mind create the external reality. So the inner voice is very important. And then we also notice the body whenever we're speaking. So often people will clam up, they'll get tight, they'll, get up here, they'll forget how to breathe, they'll do all these things. So the body is actually a participant in what's happening with the voice and how the voice is being expressed. The body is also speaking, the body is also communicating or preventing communication in a lot of different ways. And so being at peace with what we're saying and at peace with the voice happens with finding peace within the body. And then the actual voice, like texture and tone, is so important. Our voices and the frequency of our voices actually matches the frequency of people's brainwave patterns. So if you speak really regulated and calm and peacefully, you actually can create that same internal environment in someone's mind. If you speak very deeply, you can create like almost like a sedative brainwave state for people. If you speak very high and you're like really in your head and you're like this, you're going to actually stress people out. And so your voice is making people feel something with the words and then with the tone. And what I've found the most, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, is that the people that are the most authentic are the best speakers. The people that are the most powerful are the best speakers. Every single person that you could think of right now that's powerful or that's doing big work is a clear communicator or a unique speaker or has some way that their voice is being shared in the world. And so the more we can really think about doing that, making peace with our thoughts and our body and mind, the more power and impact we're going to have. And I think for everybody listening right now, your community, I mean, these are people that definitely should have more impact because I'm sure they're just amazing.
Oh, wow. I just thank you for that wisdom you just dropped because it's awesome, especially for someone like myself who does a lot of speaking. I'm like, damn, okay, yeah, I totally vibe with that. I can imagine too, what I'm hearing you say kind of in between the lines is something like, you have to evolve with your voice. Your voice will evolve as you start to understand how to harness it and how to use it and what to use it for. Is that kind of what you're alluding to as well? Hey everyone, it's Kat popping in during the episode today to tell you about my free cycle breaker quiz. Do you ever feel like you're the black sheep of your family, or maybe you find yourself stuck in the same family patterns or dynamics over and over again with no relief? Well, what if I told you you could transform that role into something really, really powerful? When you you take my Cycle Breaker quiz, I help you understand the childhood coping tools that are showing up in your adult life today. And by understanding how you show up with your family and the role you play, this can be the portal into understanding the patterns of your lineage. Ready to embrace your role? Go to catdow.com/cyclebreaker to take the quiz or visit the link in the show notes below. Your transformation from black sheep to cycle breaker starts right now.
Yeah, I think I can even tell the story of my voice as an example. So we started the podcast in 2016, but before that, I thought I wanted to be a soul cycle instructor. I was living in New York City. I was in the corporate world and I was working a bunch of different corporate jobs that I was successful in, but I didn't feel successful. I didn't feel aligned. I didn't feel excited. I would go cry in this conference room every day. I was miserable because I wanted to do something with meaning in my life. So I felt like that was going to be Soul Cycle. So I auditioned to go to, and I auditioned for Soul Cycle because through the process of trying to be an instructor, you have to audition, you have to interview and then audition. And an audition is basically just performing songs in front of a room of other people that are auditioning to become instructors. So I get my songs ready. I get on the bike in front of this room of people that are also auditioning in front of these instructors that are grading you. And I put on like the Britney Spears style microphone on my head and I'm like putting it on and my music comes on and I go to talk in front of this room of other instructors at this audition. And I wanted to have my head to like go back into the wall because I could not stand to hear my voice projected in front of the room. I felt embarrassed. I felt stupid. I almost started put on this like comedian act. Like it was very weird. I was like trying to be cool. Like it was bizarre to see me react to being projected in front of the room on a microphone. And that says so much about your worth, about your power, about your belief in yourself, about your grounded, it just says so much. So after that, I started to get vocal lessons with someone in New York City. So I was working in New York City at the time. So every Wednesday I'd go an hour uptown to get vocal lessons with this vocal coach for an hour. And I did it for almost a year. And I thought I was doing it for Soul Cycle to be a better instructor, to be better on the microphone when I auditioned again, but it was actually for almost 30. And by taking those vocal lessons and really learning about my voice and learning how to be better on the microphone and learning about the accent that I have because I grew up from Ohio and learning about breathing in through the belly and like the texture and tone of our voice and how a lot of us are taught to be up here and we're taught to be in our head. And it's like, yeah, that's really cool. And oh my God, that's amazing. And wow, cool. Especially as women, most of us are taught that our voice is best being high when actually it's like the best when it's low and rich and in our body. So I just learned so much about the voice. So that really started me on my journey of actually changing my voice and actually having more of a voice that was made for me and meant for me. And the truth of who I was now in part of the voice. So over the years with the podcast, my voice has changed completely. My voice changes all the time. Like I can hear it subtly. I don't think anyone else could, but if I'm really embodied, if I just got a massage, my voice is like buttery, rich, juicy, deep. If I'm being really honest, my voice is buttery, rich, juicy, deep. If I'm being out of integrity or I'm not being myself, I'll hear my voice kind of up in my head. And I just use it as a gauge and monitor to see how authentic I'm being, to see how connected I am, to see how truthful I am. And I think everyone, when they really tune to the voice and the texture and tone, can use it as a guide and gauge to how authentic they're being.
That's such powerful medicine. I really hope it meets the right people because that is really fucking powerful. So thank you for sharing that.
What's your relationship to your voice? Like, how do you see it?
So it's interesting you say that because we have kind of a bit of crossover, I think, in our journeys of little things. I used to work for my family's winery in the Central Coast of California, doing their social and doing wine dinners. And I got the opportunity to do the job right after I got divorced. I was like, I have all the time in the world. Send me around the country, send me around the world. Like I'll do all these public speaking things, but I didn't have social media. Like it was a very like raw dog moment. I just got like thrown into it. I don't really drink, even though my family had a winery, and I would just pretend, like I would just sip the wine, but I would practice speaking in front of all of these people about truly a topic I wasn't super stoked about, but it was just, I didn't realize that it was preparing me for what I do now in small and in big ways. And I had a podcast during my time working at the winery. It was called The Thirsty, and it was mixing pop culture and wine. And those moments, I was speaking to some really well-known people in the wine industry, and going back and listening to them now, you can hear the nervousness in my voice, and you can hear the like, am I good enough? Like, do you really want to talk to me about wine? Like, what the hell is like all this stuff I'm talking about? But it set such an important foundation for what I do now. So that's why I feel so deeply about what you're sharing. But the part that really blew my mind was using your voice as kind of an authenticator for where you're at in your embodiment. And it also is a beautiful co-regulation tool in connection. I feel like you could use your voice if you're really being in your own energy. If somebody can't meet you in that, there's almost this like, oh, what's the vibe we're riding right now in this conversation? Are we both like being in our integrity? Like what's happening in this? So just so awesome.
Yeah. And just for the listeners, to like double click on the co-regulation, if you want to try, being with someone who is stressed or anxious or out of body or kind of, not very regulated, I guarantee you, if you meet them and continue to meet them in a slow, regulated tone and pace, they will eventually meet you, or there will be a call to the discrepancy of the voices. Because what can happen is someone's like, hey, like, oh my God, what are you doing? And then you're like, oh my God. And you guys just kind of like match each other. But if you commit to not matching energy in that way, or matching frequency, or matching texture and tone, not only will you like win, but you will be the person that sets the tone, like via entrainment, to create a better situation and a more calm and regulated situation.
Yeah.
That's why oftentimes mothers talk to their children and they're like, how are you doing, honey? You kind of keep it low, you keep it chill. Like you really can change someone's complete experience and frequency just with your voice.
Yeah, completely. I so receive that. Thanks for sharing that wisdom. So I imagine after all of the things that you've accomplished in your career, the podcast, the book, the speaking engagements, metamorphosis, the voice activation, like I've been following this journey that you've shared on social media, and it's just so beautiful. Love the broadcast channels as well. But I imagine that your definition of success has changed over that time. And I think I'm personally really curious how it's changed. If I think back to my journey starting 4 or 5 years ago, I would only hope that I would end up where I am today. And yet my definition of success has changed drastically. So I'm curious if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us.
Yeah, I'd love to hear yours too, because I think, to be completely honest, I think for me, my Achilles heel is success. And I think most of my life, what I struggled with the most was my body. And I think that was like my thing. It was just my constant loop was my body. How much do I weigh? How much should I weigh? What did I work out? Kind of like that Tetris game of numbers around body. And when I really healed that and really, came into a better right relationship with it, my success thing kind of came back online. And I realized so much that for me and my family where I grew up, success was like the marker of love, how successful you are. And success is visibility, success is money, success is, just a badge. So I still struggle with not thinking I'm as successful as I am. And I work on that quite often with my coaches and my teachers and all of that. So I don't necessarily think I'm successful. I think I have gotten more at peace with where I am as I've gotten older. I think I've become more grounded, and the way that I measure my success now, and the way that I kind of come back home to myself when I find myself going outside of myself or going too far reaching of like, I should be here, I should be doing that, like they're doing this, they're doing that, kind of the outside of our self comparison loop, or kind of that like not enoughness. I'll just come back to the present moment. And I have to say that 99% of the time when I'm really present to the moment, I love my life so much. Like I am surrounded by amazing people. I'm in amazing places. I eat amazing food. I move my body. I live really well. I to some it might not be amazing, to others it might be amazing. It's my version of amazing. And so that's what I just try and do on a daily basis, is like what I seek is the whatever happens in the moment. So what I seek is the connection with the people that I serve. What I seek is, being able to rest when I need. What I seek is living in a home now. I've dreamt of having a home for so long. So being able to rest in a home. What I seek is having deep, meaningful relationships. What I seek is feeling like I'm on purpose and I'm able to serve. And I do feel like that. And the more deep I've connected with God, and the more deep I've connected in my spiritual practice, the less I've looked outside of myself for my definition of success and the more I've looked internally. And I think right now I don't necessarily have a definition of success. I think I have one version of it for sure. Like I can't lie and say that I don't. But I think I hold to it very loosely and I try as best as I can to just keep focused on my path and remind myself that if that is definition of success exists in someone else's world, that mine will always be different. And that because I'm different and because my soul blueprint is different, my gifts are different, my expression is different, my version of success will always be different. And so I can't really compare or look at anyone else's and know where I'm going and if it's the right place.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think I can relate to the idea of maybe success at one point looked like a number or a follower or like these measurable things. I grew up in a very entrepreneurial Lebanese immigrant family. So they totally lived the American dream. Like once you make it here, you'll be successful. Once you make it here, you'll be, once you look like this or there's always like, and I think it's healthy to have things that you like want to work towards. And I, like you said, I definitely have a vision of what maybe success would feel or look like. But I last year went through this really huge, like personal, I guess, rebrand while I was rebranding my business. And it was like, for me, success is more of a feeling now. It's like it's an energy in my body. It's when I know that I'm being fully authentic with myself, even if other people don't like it. And a huge topic that I touch on in my work with family constellation therapy is belonging. I'm actually writing a book about it right now. So I'm sure you have so much wisdom to share on the book writing process, but there's so much pain when it comes to like belonging and success for me and my family. Like, am I going to belong if my success looks this way or that way? Mm-hmm. So the reclamation of myself, my soul blueprint, my authenticity, who I'm here to be, it's probably going to look vastly different from the program in my mind of what I thought success should be. And I've noticed that when I'm really truly being authentic and being of service, and I allow myself to feel all of my emotions, messy or pretty or whatever they are, like there's just so much of the depth and the feeling of it for me personally because of that external environment that I grew up in as well. And I think also success is not having it look like everyone else's.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big one. It's all about feeling purposeful within.
I think when you find how to serve, and for me, now that I know, and the podcast has been in service for sure, but now that I'm working one-on-one with people more and then at retreats and, just like in a different way that's more deep. And now that I really can see the impact of my work, it's like, I don't even know, like that to me feels like so much success. And I think one thing that I noticed too, that a lot of women do is they don't even define what success is. And so they'll be like, I want to be successful. And it's like, okay, what is that? Is that 2 homes? Is that, 100K a year? Is that freedom? Is that like your version of success is completely different than mine, So I think when we can actually get clear on it, then we can make goals towards it. And I think for a lot of people, they are very nebulous about what their definition of success is. And then it becomes very easy to not hit something you're not defining. Mm-hmm. And so the more we can be clear with ourselves about what we're looking to do, what we're looking to create, the more likely we are to achieve that goal, or we can adjust it, if we continue to kind of not meet it. Mm-hmm. But I think a last thing that you mentioned that I really believe too is that the less our goals can be attached to numbers, I think the better. Our soul is not limited and bound by numbers of followers, money, weight. It's like we are feeling beings. We are beings that are motivated by connection, by growth, by freedom, by desire, whatever the feelings are. And I think the more that we can align to feelings, the more satisfied we'll be.
Yeah, I think what I was trying to get at is that feelings are my indicator of whether or not I'm feeling in alignment with that success.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love that.
So on that topic of success, we talked about being in true alignment and authentic with yourself about what that looks like. And many times in family constellation therapy, we're unlayering all of these trauma patterns that help clients get more in tune with their authentic selves due to this unhealed trauma, and putting down the stories that they're carrying for their families. And that community, this community rather, for Heal with Kat is very in tune with that. Have you noticed that you've been able to discern between your true desires and where they come from in terms of family or culture or society? Has that impacted your journey with success and fulfillment at all?
What a good question. Wow. It's interesting. I did family constellations. I've done it a few times, but I did one last year at the end of the year. And I remember giving things back, to mom and dad and all of that and how profound that was. So just shouting that out, that it was really profound work. And what's funny is when was it? I do work with a spiritual teacher biweekly, and we do like subconscious reprogramming work. It's like Kabbalistic subconscious reprogramming. And a few weeks ago, something came up around success. And basically what we came to find was that I had been running the belief that in order to keep my mom alive, I had to be successful. And my mom struggled with mental health and was suicidal. And there were moments and times of, some traumatic events. And so I remember just kind of waking up to that and being like, oh my God, is it me that wants success? Is it the little girl in me? Because she feels like that's what she has to do to keep mom here. And it's so closely tied. And I think for a lot of people, they create a lot of businesses and brands and things out of a desire for their inner child to heal and of a desire for their inner child rather than their soul. So they'll do things, like a lot of women are like, I'm going to be the girl boss, whatever. And it's like really, they actually really struggle with the feminine and they struggle with female relationships and they really like actually are mean to women and they actually need the medicine that they're putting out in the world. And I see that so much in the spirituality space where there's teachers that are teaching the thing that they need the most. They're teaching the thing that they're not embodying, but desire to embody. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm not saying that I've never not done that. But I think for a lot of us, not looking at that is very important and almost very dangerous in a lot of ways. So I've had to unpack a lot of it because I think for me, my parents didn't necessarily want me, they didn't really care what I did per se. They didn't really have a vision for me in my life. No one really had like, Krista's going to do this, Krista's going to do that, because I've always kind of been like a little black sheep. But I knew they wanted me to be making money and they wanted me to be visible in some ways. So I can imagine that with almost 30, there was a part of that was built by my inner child's desire to be seen, validated, heard, to be someone that was a public figure was definitely has weight in my family. And then now that I'm kind of transitioning to more spiritual teacher and coach in roles that are less public, in depth work, in work that is more one-to-one, it is less against what my family would desire or believe to be worthy or valid, but it's really the call of my soul. And, I'm so grateful because I think in life, when you have a very close relationship with your family, it can be so beautiful. You can create secure attachment. You can have this foundation for growth that's just stunning. And then also on the other hand, I think it can kind of keep you in this place where you feel like you have to appease your family and you have to do what they want. And you feel even more closely connected to doing the things that they want you to do. And for me, because I didn't have a close relationship with my family, I never felt obligated to do what they wanted me to do. I never felt like I really cared about their opinion consciously. So I was kind of a little bit more loose around their desires, but there were unconscious things that were sort of running the show. So I think I'm working with that now. I think I've done a really beautiful job of untangling that, but I still think I'm in discovery phase of like what the truth is for my soul and knowing that that may still change.
I also think that speaks to the idea that we are these souls in these human bodies, these meat suits, here to evolve and grow. And so the journey is always, I think, of becoming all the time and evolving as we get older, which I'm kind of tired of constantly rebranding since the COVID pandemic, but here we are constantly rebranding.
Say more.
Well, I'm so curious. We've talked a lot about trust. We've talked a lot about your voice. We've talked a lot about success. What does being in your power look like now? And how is it different from what it used to mean for you? Because all of what I'm hearing you talk about is you standing in your power.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure for you to ask this because there's always more, but I do believe I'm so in my power. And the way that I know that I'm in my power is because I'm in my like softness and I'm in my heart and I'm in my femininity and I'm in my tenderness and I'm in my way of being that I never thought was possible. I think back in the day, starting almost 30, and when I was in my marriage, being in my power was controlling. Being in my power was overdoing it. being in my power was pushing. Being in my power was in my masculine. And I love my masculine. I have a really strong masculine. So I don't think that's the problem, but it was just overdoing, overfunctioning, overcompensating, push, push, push. Like power was like outward force power. And now my power is so much more grounded and regulated and so much more magnetic than it's ever been. And I think what has shifted for me is my connection to self. And so it's kind of hard to speak about the connection to self if you don't have a texture of understanding the felt sense of connecting to yourself, like that anchored in soul, like you. And that has been cultivated over time with meditation, with therapy, with internal family systems, parts work, with doing things like a darkness retreat. I've spent years doing so much work to help me get to the place of knowing and understanding and being connected to myself. But the relationship that I have with myself allows me to have a connection and awareness of my energy and how I'm interacting with others. So where before I used to, attune to everyone else, I would unconsciously attune to everyone in the room and say, who do you want me to be? What do you want me to say? Like, what can I do to make you comfortable? Now, when you have energetic mastery or awareness or spiritual badassery, you are aware of your own energy and you can be in communication and consciousness about how you're running it. So I can choose. I'm not going to go outside of myself to make anyone comfortable, to make anyone happy. I'm not going to say anything that's out of integrity because I'm scared, because I feel like they don't like me, because, I don't want them to know that it's okay. Like everything sort of happens with a awareness of what I'm doing energetically and a consciousness of how my energy is run. And there's less desire to make others feel good, others feel safe, others feel something that's not my responsibility. I've unplugged from the belief that I'm responsible for anyone else's energy, anyone else's success, anyone else's failure, anyone else's anything. I really just take responsibility for my own energy, for my own relationship to myself, for the way that I live and move in the world. And it's taken years. But I will say that for anyone that wants to be more in their power, I think the number one thing you can do is learn to connect with yourself and your desires on a daily basis in meditation or prayer. So that is checking in. How are you? How are you doing? How are you feeling? And those simple questions of literally just tuning the attention inward helps you create a sense of self that most people don't have. Most people wake up, go to their phones, and they're already in someone else's world, someone else's job. They're already on vacation somewhere. They're in this whole portal. They go to work, they're in someone else's portal. So the more you can kind of define, this is who I am, this is how I feel, this is what's going on with me, more often, the better you will be able to be in your own power, because being in your own power is being you. It's like having the most grounded sense of self. It's not even about, pushing, forcing anything. It's just about being you.
Well, I was going to ask us what's one thing you want to leave the audience with, but I don't think we can top that. Thank you for your vulnerability and sharing everything today, especially with the family stuff and some of the family constellation work that you were talking about. This has been an honor. I've learned so much from everything that I feel like I just went on a mini voice activation retreat with you, but I would like to ask, is there anything that you want to leave our community with that they can hold on to?
Yeah, I think in the book, one of the things that I really wanted to get through and Lindsay wanted to get through that I wish I would have known way earlier was that you're not behind, you're becoming. And knowing that for me would have changed my life. I felt like I was behind. I wasn't married by 30. I didn't have kids by 30. I wasn't a CEO by 30. I didn't have $1 million by 30. I wasn't Forbes under 30 by 30. I wasn't, all of these things. And I had these arbitrary timelines, these arbitrary dates in my head. And because I wasn't hitting them, I felt like there was something wrong with me. And I felt like I was off or I was late or something. So much of life is just about becoming the person you came here to be and uncovering who that person is. And for anyone that feels lost, truly just know that this is all part of the path and that your soul is never lost.
Love that. I could hear that now, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, probably 5 years from now. That's like a cost.
Tattoo it on my face, literally.
Yeah, literally. All right. Well, everyone, today's June 3rd. It is the big release of Almost 30, a definitive guide to a life you love for the next decade and beyond. Go pick it up. You don't have to pre-order it anymore. You can have it in your hands today. So make sure to go and do that. Krista, thank you so much for being a guest on the Heal with Kat podcast. It was more than a pleasure. It was an honor. So thank you.
Thank you, baby. This was such a good conversation. Your questions were amazing. I feel so lucky to be connected to your community, and I want to do some family constellations.
Anytime, I'm here. You just let me know.
Sounds good. Thank you guys, and enjoy the
Thanks.
book.
Thank you.